Hello and welcome to the first edition of the Rolling Illini of this year. I am Joshua joined as always, like last year, by Avery Schaefer and Miles Hill and Andrew Scalier with UPTV. We are so glad to be back with you. If you've been listening all week or the past couple weeks and you're expecting to hear Illini Drive, they go Monday through Thursday. And on Fridays, we bring something a little bit different. It's a show about adaptive athletics and about disability as a whole. It's called the Rollin Illini. It's every Friday from 6 to 7. So if you're turning in for the first time, we hope you'll tune in every week. And if you are a listener who has listened all of last year, welcome back. We're so glad to be back. Guys, how was your summer?
Very active.
Yeah.
I guess would be the word. How about you?
Summer was great, man. Enjoyed it. Had a lot of time off, but I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of things happened this summer in the Paralympic movement around the world. But one of those big things was that the U.S. Olympic Committee decided to change its name to the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. And this was huge news. So before this, it was called the U.S. Olympic Committee and the U.S. Paralympic Committee, and they were different things, despite the fact their funding came from the same places and a lot of those things. But they decided to join them. So now the official name of the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee is the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. And that is huge. So, Avery, what do you think that this means for the disability community?
So, as a disability advocate myself, I have always been a fan of inclusion and equal opportunity. Last year, I don't know how many of you guys remember, but we talked about the unequal pay among men and women and how unfair that was. Here is a perfect example of a governmental body taking steps to correct a problem like that, which is a huge governmental and social achievement.
For sure. I mean, and this is coming right on the heels of the U.S. OPC now giving Paralympic athletes the same level of pay for medals as their Olympic counterparts. That was a huge thing just financially for athletes, and we talked about that a little bit last year.
Yeah.
For those of you that don't know, up until the 2018 games, Olympians were paid about 3 times more for medals than Paralympians. And that was cool. Another thing pay-wise is the Peachtree Road Race, the largest 10K for people, a wheelchair race in the world, decided to give a lot of money for people who could break the course record and gave equal amounts for wheelchair racers and runners. And our boy Daniel Romacek, who we talked about a lot last year,
Yes.
destroyed the course record and won the Peachtree for a second straight year. So it was a big payday for Daniel.
Surprise.
Yeah, not at all. When this news came out, I saw a lot of athletes here in Illinois and a lot of Paralympic athletes from around the country talking about how important it was. But the thing that kind of stood out to me is it's finally the Paralympics are the same as the Olympics, and it kind of separates a little bit more from the Special Olympics. And I'm not saying the Special Olympics is a bad thing. The Special Olympics and the Paralympics both serve a very important role, but they're different things, and I think that this kind of separates them now. So maybe people will be less likely to ask, are you guys a part of the Special Olympics? Because those of you that don't know, the Special Olympics is for people with cognitive disabilities, whereas the Paralympics is for people with physical disabilities. And so those are two very different things. And like I said, they do, both organizations do great things, but they're different. Yeah. And I think that this kind of can close the gap in the difference.
Yeah, definitely agree with you there on that one, Josh.
Now, I'd like to amend, or I guess challenge, something that you said. That is that now the Paralympics and Olympics are the same thing. They are not. They are simply something that gives equal opportunity to Paralympians and otherwise.
Well, what I meant by that was they're under the same roof now, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And when they were separate, but it's kind of that whole separate but equal thing. Like they were separate organizations when it was the U.S. Olympic Committee and the U.S. Paralympic Committee, and they got the same funding.
I knew what you meant. I just wanted to make sure our listeners knew what you meant.
Yeah. I mean, and like I said, nothing against the Special Olympics. It's just a different mission than the Paralympics.
Yes,
and
of course.
I think that can be done. So, Miles, when you heard about the news, what was your kind of first reaction, first thoughts?
Of course, same thing that Avery kind of said in terms of a governmental achievement. It's a big win for Paralympics. It's a big win for Olympics. I agree, or that's how I think. Honestly, Olympic USOC and USPC, I never thought should have been separated in the first place. Like you said, they get funding from the same place. So why would they be under two different roofs or under two different organizations? I thought once they were put together, they were merged together. I thought it was a really great look for Paralympics, and it should help us moving forward in terms of recognition and trying to push the availability for Paralympics to be watched across the world as well.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this. So this is the press release from the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee that was up here, teamusa.org. And it was on June the 20th is when this was done. And so they have a goal of 2020 on having all of their kind of properties named with the USOPC instead of the USOC. And that's awesome. And their new U.S. Olympic Hall of Fame and Museum is now going to be the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Hall of Fame. We'll have to have one of my friends and teammates, Abby Farrell, on. Her mom is playing a big role in building that museum in Colorado Springs.
Really?
And so that's an awesome thing that's going to open, and we'll talk about later this year. It's now time for our live reads. We'd like to remind you that this show is brought to you by the University of Illinois Division of Intercollegiate Athletics.
Oh, yeah.
We've got a big game this weekend. A big game. And guess what? Illinois is still in the hunt for a national championship in football.
Yes.
It's insane. We're 2-0. We beat UConn last week on the road. First non-conference road win in 12 years.
Oh, yeah. We take
Really?
Yeah.
We take
12 years.
First win in the Northeast. This is our year. This is the year. So it continues this week at 11 a.m. We will be playing Eastern Michigan, a very, very good MAC team. And so get your tickets at fightingillini.com. You get all the tickets. You can get single game tickets, multi-game tickets.
I will be there.
Yeah.
If you want to come say hi, get some autographs, talk about the show or anything else.
Yeah,
I'm happy to talk to you, as are these two.
They're now selling alcohol at the stadium if you were so inclined.
If that's how you feel.
And so, yeah. And then, so this weekend is that. And then next weekend, talk about a big game against Nebraska.
Oh, yeah.
7 p.m. under the lights. A chance for the Illini to probably go 4-0. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but that's going to be a big game. So Illini fans need to show up. So get your tickets at fightingillini.com. Inspire and achieve. That's what we do here at the University of Illinois.
Yeah.
We'll be back right after this commercial break. Welcome back to Rolling Illini on WPGU 107.1. I am Joshua Joins with Avery Schaefer and Miles Hill. We hope you all had a fantastic week. So we're going to move on here, and we're going to talk about the Parapan Games just really fast. The Parapan Games are something that happened 2 weeks after the Pan Am Games, which is something that a lot more people are familiar with. But first, let's go back and talk about Jenna Fessmeyer. Jenna was on the show last year. We talked a little bit about her. Back in June, she ran or competed in the Grandma's Marathon in Duluth, Minnesota. I forgot the state. I almost said Maryland. Duluth, Minnesota. And at the time, she was on the outside looking in for the Parapan Games. Ended up surpassing with her time the person who was in front of her to get a spot on the Parapan team that went to Peru a couple weeks ago. And actually just got a sponsorship. So, Miles, what sponsorship did she just get?
She just got a sponsorship with... she just got a sponsorship with Oisel, I believe is the company. And she's looking to really... Man, that was a real big surprise. She said she'd been holding it back, and she had known about it for about a week, but just posted it. And, man, it's a big sponsorship for her. I bet it's really going to help her continue to push the career, and she's doing great, like you said, getting the win in Duluth that really put her into Parapans, and she did great at Parapans. So that was a big one for her, and I think that's gonna help her out a lot and continue to push her through her career. So
Yeah. And the Illini were very, very impressive and well represented in Peru. The track team, which represents a lot of the best in the world, Tatiana McFadden, Daniel Romachuk, Jenna Fessmeyer, all of those people, they won 14 of the U.S.'s 67 medals. That's 20% of the U.S. medals were won by Illini track athletes. And then the USA wheelchair basketball team, the women got silver medal. But that's not all bad because the Canadian were led by a woman by the name of Katie, I want to say Dandero.
I think it's Dandanu, but I'm not.
Dandanu. And she is a grad student, first year here for our women's team. She put up 28 points on the Americans to lead Canada to a gold medal.
I think I'm pretty certain it was a triple double. Actually,
It was a triple double.
Okay.
Yes.
It was for sure a triple double. And she dominated the Americans, which is sad for Team USA, but is great for the Illini women.
Yep.
As she is a beast that they are looking forward to. And we'll talk more about her in the coming weeks. But led by then. And then Ali Abanez and is that it? Oh, and Squirrel, Caitlin Eden, both represented Team USA on the women's side. On the men's side, it was all alumni. It was Steve Serio and Brian Bell, but they led the Americans to a 30-point win over Canada in the gold medal game on the men's side. It's important to mention all four of those teams have punched their tickets to 2020 in Tokyo with the wins.
Now, on a less serious note, I have to know, where does this nickname Squirrel come from?
I wish I could tell you.
Yeah, I was about to say, honestly, ever since I come into the program, that was just her name. Everybody called her Squirrel, so I'm not sure.
It's kind of one of those things that she came around before us, and then we showed up and we just called her. It's like Turtle. Call him LaFawn.
Yeah.
Just call him Turtle.
Exactly. I found out how Turtle got his nickname way after I'd been calling him Turtle. I've been calling him Turtle for years.
So, but it was a great showing by both teams, and both teams have work to do, but a lot of potential as they head into Tokyo 2020. All four punch tickets. It's also important to note that the Canadians had Pat Anderson, who is a former Illini grad and a great wheelchair basketball player. So that is your Parapan updates. Congratulations to all of the Illini athletes and all the American athletes who won medals and competed at Parapans. Now we're going to move on to Miles. Miles in this last break brought up an article that one of his friends wrote about inspiration and how people with disabilities are just inspirations for playing sports and how that's wrong. So Miles, go ahead and explain it.
Yeah, so it was a great article written by Matt Hartman from my hometown, Durham, North Carolina. You know, we rep that. But it was just a great article that I read, and he featured me on. He has features from Shaquem Griffin, talks about Oscar Pistorius. Just a lot of great examples of disabled athletes who not only achieved something either in a sport made for people with disabilities, wheelchair basketball, adapted track for Oscar Pistorius, but also outside of that, Shaquem Griffin, we all know of him, single-hand amputee in the NFL, playing for the Seattle Seahawks now. And, man, it's a great article, posted to the outline.com, and it essentially talks about a couple of things. Matt Hartman, growing up, played field hockey, and he wasn't very good.
Able-bodied field hockey.
Able-bodied field hockey at that. And
to clarify for the listeners.
Yeah, so able-bodied field hockey, and he really he knew he wasn't that good. He explains that he wasn't that good in the article, but at the same time, he always would get interviewers, people trying to come in and ask him how is playing hockey with one arm, and he responds, I don't know, I've never played it with two. Or so, just kind of smart things like that. But it was mainly because he didn't really like the attention, and he just wanted to be a kid and play sports. And that's the biggest thing, is that reading the article, you start to recognize that not only is there a spectacle behind people with disabilities playing any sports at all, adapted or unadapted, but even bigger, that a lot of these kids that are growing up just want to play to be a part and be inclusive. So I talk about that a little bit in the interview, talking about how growing up I played able-bodied basketball before I played wheelchair basketball, and that I was trash. And the option for me was either I could sit on the sideline and not play at all, or I could play and be trash. So, it was a really great article from him. Talks about Shaquem Griffin and how he loves the role that he's in. And that's the big thing, is that some people, once they get into it, they do enjoy the role of being inspirational. But not all of people with disabilities are what you want, or are looking to just be inspiration. They're just looking to play the sport and enjoy the recreation.
I feel like for us, as members of the disabled community, inspirational is kind of a buzzword that doesn't have the same meaning that you would be able to look up in Merriam-Webster or one of your trusted dictionaries. It's a word with a connotation that's almost negative, and a lot of us don't like it. I personally don't mind people using it with me as long as they give a reason why. Back it up with something I've actually done to inspire you.
So that's kind of what I was going to bring up, is like, I think Shaquem Griffin is inspirational.
Yeah,
but the reason he's inspirational is not because he has a disability. It's because he's an incredible athlete. Exactly. And I want his work ethic. Right. Because what got him to where he was not his disability. It was that work ethic to overcome the disability. And he's playing at the highest levels ever. Yeah. Like in the world of American football. And so that's kind of where I draw the line, right? Like, it's like, I can be inspirational for you, but like, it's because of my work ethic, or because of something I did. It's not just because, like, look, you're playing sports and you have a disability. Congratulations.
Yeah, and to quote Matt Hartman in the article, we should be inspiring because of what we do and how well we do it, not just because we didn't roll over at birth and give up because of our disability.
Yeah, and that's incredible. And that's kind of my problem with like ESPN and the way that kind of organizations like that cover wheelchair basketball. Is like, it's like the Valor Games are great, and it's I love our veterans, and I'm glad that they're getting back and doing things that they enjoy.
Yes,
but that's not the best wheelchair basketball out there.
Right.
Why are these college teams that are practicing 5 days a week, or the national teams, not making it on these ESPN type shows, or Fox Sports 1 or ABC or any of those? Like that is the best of the best the sport has to offer, and it's because of the storyline.
Right.
Is why. And then the Special Olympics, once again, nothing against the Special Olympics, but the Special Olympics makes it on ESPN and ABC, and Paralympic sports do not.
Yeah.
I mean, even in the Paralympic Games, the gold medal game, ice hockey game, it was the USA versus Canada, two of the top teams in the world.
Right.
Streamed online.
Right. No one knew about it.
Yeah. And so that's kind of what my issue is this goes to coverage, right?
Right.
Is all the coverage is inspirational, and it's not about the action, it's about the storyline behind the action.
Exactly. And that's what he goes into detail in on this article. It's a great one.
That's not necessarily a problem, but it becomes one when it's the sole focus of the coverage.
Yeah.
I just want to make that very, very clear.
Yeah, I mean, once again, like, if you watch any show about like College Game Day or NFL Sunday Countdown, like, they have features that have really inspirational stories.
Right.
It's just that's the background. That gives you more insight, and what the reason people are watching is because of the action on the field of play.
Yeah, and to continue on that and add on to what Avery said, I agree that there has to be a storyline behind it. Journalism is about stories, and we're not just writing about a great athlete. If LeBron didn't have a story behind him, if he's just a great athlete at the end of the day. But on top of the storyline, it has to be the skill, the hard work, what they actually put in, and how they made it to their point. It's not just a video of a kid who just got into a wheelchair and just started playing and is shooting and airballing layups, but at least he's trying. I mean, sure, you call him inspirational if you want, but they haven't done anything. They just got in the chair and shot a basketball. Same thing you would do if you grabbed the basketball and shot it yourself. So.
Are you uncomfortable when the coverage is like that? Because I become uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, the biggest thing for me is that we don't have enough coverage as is of people with disabilities. So it becomes the kind of ultimatum is like, you can either dislike what's being said, the message that's being brought across, which is you're inspirational for trying, or you can accept it and then allow it to become coverage for your sport and try to grow it. And so that's where I get caught in kind of like between a rock and a hard place. It's like, this isn't really inspirational. It's just them trying to be active, and this is what something all humans want, is to be accepted, to play, to enjoy interaction with other. But at the same time, it is good coverage for the sport, and people do end up looking into the sport and trying to learn more, regardless of the skill.
But is it good coverage for the right reason?
That's where the line is drawn.
No,
it's not for the right reason, but exactly.
How do you think that broadcasters should make that jump from, the coverage that they currently do to the coverage that we all in this room think that adaptive athletics deserves? How do you convince them to make that jump?
Yeah, it's a great story. The biggest thing is that I think everybody has a story. Every athlete has a story, and it's not easy for any athlete to make it to any professional platform that they make it to. Of course, we still want to hear stories about youth athletics. That's something that people are looking into now. You see the growth of overtime, high school basketball. Even these young kids, we're now starting to glorify their stories, and how you see high school basketball, 5-star recruits, 4-star recruits. We're starting to watch that. And these guys, they may not have necessarily accomplished much yet. They're not at the top of their game yet, but you can see them growing. And that's the biggest thing, is that a lot of local news coverage, especially. If you get ESPN, you'll see a lot of teams. We had the Berry brothers from Houston, and their team is good, and they've put in work. And that's an inspiration mixed with skill. They were really good. They're trying hard. You can see it. They take the coach's perspective, who is an able-bodied person. It's great, man.
I forgot about that. If you were listening to this right now, and we will also post this onto our Facebook page, the 30 for 30, or it was an
E60.
It was an E60 documentary on Peter Berry and Aaron Berry, two brothers.
Eric.
It's Aaron. It's Aaron Berry.
It's Aaron.
Yeah.
Aaron. Okay.
Two brothers out of Houston when they were like 10 years old.
Yeah, pretty young.
Pretty young. They were in a car crash that killed both of their parents. Their uncles took them in, or uncle and aunt took them in, and they found the sport of wheelchair basketball and have thrived. Peter Berry is a competitor. He's currently committed to play at the University of Alabama. I respect him a lot. Coach Trice, which is the coach that's in the interview, is a good friend of my dad's, and is one of my favorite people to talk to about the sport of wheelchair basketball. That's a great story, and I think the right coverage was crazy as it took him 2 years to get it out. Yeah,
no, I was actually talking to Trice on the way. This summer we had Illini wheelchair basketball camps, I would say early July, and I was getting onto a plane at ORD, and I ran into them. And I just recently saw something on Facebook about the E60, and I was like, oh, look at y'all right here. I got to talk to you about it. Because I hadn't been able to watch it yet. And I was looking for a link. I couldn't find a link. So I was telling them, like, yo, y'all got to send it to me so I can really sit down and watch it. And Trice was telling me about how they actually were on an E60 before, which really makes this whole article go full circle. They ended up meeting J.J. Watt because of their disability. It had nothing to do with how great they were at wheelchair basketball. There was no story on their skill in wheelchair basketball. The story was they both got in a car crash. Their parents passed. They're playing wheelchair basketball, and J.J. Watt met them. It was kind of almost an inspirational thing for the kids. Like, hey, there's the role model to look up to.
Now, to J.J. Watt's credit, he met them right after the car crash.
Yeah,
and he's become very close family friends with them. In fact, when he was recovering from injury 2 summers ago in Wisconsin, he came down and saw the Berry brothers when they were at a basketball camp at Whitewater, which is a place where wheelchair basketball is played at University of Wisconsin.
Whitewater. Yeah.
So to his credit, but the storyline there, it should be about how great the Berry brothers are at wheelchair basketball and how they overcame the odds to be great at what they decided to do.
Exactly.
And that being great at what they decided to do is the important part there.
Yeah. Right. And so that was the thing for me. And then you're talking about how we changed the coverage look. It went from J.J. Watt going to see these guys because of their situation to 2 years later, their situation, they've actually put in the work. And now I believe they're inspirations, and they are really great guys. You meet them down to earth, man. I love both of them.
They're shown to be inspirations.
Exactly. So it was a great shift, and that's how I think coverage should change and throughout mass media is we should look at these athletes as their able-bodied counterparts. You're not going to do a story on a able-bodied athlete who scores 3 points a game, but I don't know, he broke his ankle 2 days before. He scored 3 points a game. You don't want to see that. Yeah. But when they're great, Give him the credit that's due. Yeah.
A couple things about Peter Barry. Number one, great guy, as you guys both said. He was actually my roommate at a training camp for U23. We were both alternatives and the only 2 high school players in the country on that team my senior year of high school.
Yeah.
And he's just a great guy, really down to earth, really funny.
Yeah.
Really funny guy. And I wish him the best at Alabama. We want him here, but you know,
I'm just saying it was a verbal commit.
It was.
It can come out.
He's a senior in high school this year. The other thing is that if you watch the E60, the team that they were playing was the team from Atlanta, which is the team my dad coaches.
Yeah.
And I was there for their game planning, and they had another guy named Carrington, who's a double-A amputee.
Oh, man.
And their entire game plan was to stop them, which they did, but then Peter Barry went and scored 28 points in that national championship game.
Yeah.
And brought home the varsity championship for Houston.
Oh, man, I'm getting chills. I just got chills when you said it. It was like thinking about that team, both teams, because I played both of them, Houston and Atlanta. And look, my U team, I was pretty good, but look, we didn't have any chance against both of y'all. So your team or Peter Barry's team, but just to see how much work they put in, that team was great. And for a juniors team, they really had collegiate looks. They really were one of the only junior teams that I've ever seen that really played on a collegiate level of skill.
Yep.
And that goes to attest how great they really were.
And how great Trice is.
Yeah. And Trice too.
Yeah, awesome. So we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to introduce ourselves a little bit, and then we're going to go with Avery's last big thing. But before we take a break, it's time to remind you once again that we are brought to you by the University of Illinois Division of Intercollegiate Athletics. There are a lot of things going on. Volleyball is in full session. I saw today that Stuff Huff is coming up in, I think, 2 weekends.
Oh, yeah.
That's an event where we try to stuff Huff Hall. It's free for students and $10 for people in the community. Soccer's going on. I know we're playing Northwestern next Friday. Got to get out to that game. That's our rivalry game.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, football. You can check schedules and get all of your tickets for all of the athletic events at fightingillini.com. So go do it. Support your Fighting Illini, and we will be right back after this break. And welcome back to the Rolling Illini on WPGU 107.1. I am Josh. Miles and Avery are, believe it or not, still in studio with me, and so is Andrew Scalera at UPTV. There's a couple of things that we wanted to bring up. Number one is that if you love our voices and want to see our faces, looking right at the camera, you can watch us on UPTV Wednesday night at 9 p.m. It'll be replayed, and Andrew's in here filming us every week. And so we would love if you would watch that, and you can see me doing this right now. And then also WPGU 107.1, this great radio station that you were hearing us on, has a new app. You should download it. It's available on the App Store and Google Play. And you can listen to the live stream, send shout-outs, read the news, and access WPGU social media account. You should do all of those things so you can listen to us every Friday from 6 to 7 p.m. So those are the updates. So one of the things that I forgot to do at the beginning of the show that I feel is important is if you're new to the show, or if you didn't listen to us last year, or if you're just tuning in, you should know some things about us. So I think we're just going to go around the table and just, talk a little bit about us. Your name, how you got involved in Rollin Illini or wheelchair athletics. And then also, if you don't mind, your disability and how that's impacted your life, if you're okay with that. All right, we good? All right, Miles, you want to go first?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Josh introduced me. I'm Milesville from Durham, North Carolina. I got involved with Rollin Illini actually last year. I came in and something went down with another person we had on the show. Had to go do some more academic, scholarly things, trying to move on and eventually get up out of college and do life things. So Josh was like, hey, do you want to get on the show? And I was like, man, this sounds like a great opportunity. And here I am. And ever since, I've loved it, man. I enjoyed it a lot. My disability, I have a multitude of disabilities. I have club feet, disability where your feet point inward and downward at birth. And then spondyloptosis, which is an even more confusing disability. But to make it short, I was just missing some vertebrae at birth. And then my spinal cord was inflated at birth as well. And that's kind of, I don't know, to say more to the point of the article we were talking about earlier, how it's impacted my life. I've loved sports my whole entire life. I used to do mock seasons of NBA and just all types of stuff. I was way too deep into it. And I used to play body sports, but I was never really good. I just enjoyed it a lot. And then I kind of ran into wheelchair basketball. And ever since then, it kind of shot up. It was just perfect for me. So that's how I got into it, man.
Miles is a sophomore this year, as I talked about his last year. He plays wheelchair basketball at the university, and in my opinion, is the most improved player from the beginning to end of last year.
I appreciate it.
Went from not playing a lot to playing a whole lot towards the end of the year, and definitely earned it and deserved it. He's a hard worker, and we're so glad to have him. It was kind of weird how that worked out. Is like you were talking to me about how you wanted to be on the show, and I was like, we don't really have a spot, and then Zayd had to leave to do research, and I was like, Miles, guess what? I have a spot on the show, and we're so lucky to have you on the show. Thank you.
Miles better because of you.
Hey, Miles, one more thing for the listeners. What is your major?
Oh, I am undecided, but I will be declaring communications this semester. So
Nice. Congratulations.
Appreciate it.
All right, Avery, you're up.
Okay. I am the longest tenured member of Rolling Illini, sitting here at this table. This is my third year
Oh yeah.
taking over for the one and only Ryan Wilson, who recruited me at the end of 2017. You may also recognize me from Sports Power Hour from earlier this summer. I had my own show.
Oh yeah.
So, I'm back. I am a sophomore, somewhere between a sophomore and a junior. I don't know what I am. Currently studying journalism and loving every minute of it. So, yeah, that's me.
Awesome. And what is your disability?
Cerebral palsy.
Awesome. And do you want to talk about how that's impacted your life just real quick?
Yes. While most of my friends were playing youth sports, I was stuck at home sitting on the couch watching them, and I developed a special voice over a couple of years to comment on what I was seeing, and I eventually trained it into the wonderful melodious voice you hear right now. So, happenstance. So, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And we are so lucky to have Avery on the show. He is a great voice off of the basketball team. And so we are so lucky to have him. All right. So I guess that's me now.
Yeah,
me?
Josh. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So my name is Josh. I am a junior this year. This is my second year on Rolling Illini. I was recruited by Ryan when Ryan Wilson, the founder of the show, graduated. He's like, hey, we have a spot. Do you want to come? I was like, sure, I'll be a basketball person. And then one thing led to another, and I ended up being kind of put into the producer position, which was a big learning curve last year for me. But I am excited to see improvements on the show this year and to make some changes that I think the listeners are going to very much appreciate.
Yep.
I'm studying political science. Yay.
Yeah.
And just very excited. And I was born with spina bifida, which is one of the most common neural tube birth defects in the country. It's basically when the spinal column doesn't close all the way, which basically is like I like to describe it as like a incomplete spinal cord injury. And it leaves about 80% of people who have it needing to use wheelchairs for mobility. I'm very, very fortunate, though, that I can walk most places, which kind of means I get the best and worst of both worlds, right? Like, I'm not able-bodied enough to be able-bodied, but I'm not disabled enough to be disabled. And so it kind of leaves me in a weird spot and kind of gives me a different view than some other people. If I'm wearing shorts, you'll see me wear leg braces. But if I'm wearing long pants, it's kind of hard to tell. I also play wheelchair basketball here at the university. And looking forward to it. I'm so glad all of you who are listening to us are listening. We hope that you learn something throughout it, whether it be about Adapt Athletics or just the disability community and all. And so that's what I kind of want to get out of that. So that is the crew for this year. And then Andrew, who occasionally comes on, is doing the video this week. And so we're very excited to have him as well. All right, so we're going to end the show this week with what we called last year the one big thing, but I'm going to call it Avery's thing. It's going to be the name of this year's segment. It's where Avery's going to talk about something outside of sports that applies to the disability community. And so, Avery, I'm just going to let you take it away.
Okay. So, for this week, our topic will be travel abroad for people with disabilities. I had the absolute pleasure this summer of going on a disability exclusive birthright trip to Israel, 10 days for free.
Yeah.
Every Jewish kid gets that opportunity as a right. Hence the name birthright. Some of my more, shall I say, interesting experiences were having to use ramps which were designed for wheelbarrows in the old city to get around. And as you can imagine, with cobbled streets, that's fun. But if I learned one thing about myself, it's that or about disability in other countries, it's that the definition of what disability actually means is very, very different. In Israel, for instance, it typically means acquired disability from IDF injury.
What is IDF for our viewers?
For our listeners, IDF is Israeli Defense Force, the membership in which is obligatory in their culture. Something that I found very interesting. In Israel as well, I had the problem of the language barrier, which meant I couldn't talk to people and be as much of an advocate as I would have liked.
What language did they speak?
Hebrew.
Okay, they speak Hebrew.
But, yeah.
So, and this is something that I thought was really interesting when Avery decided to bring it up. Yeah. Even Miles and I know when we travel with our sports chairs, that traveling with, as someone who uses a wheelchair, a person with a disability, is tough.
Yeah.
I like to joke that I belong to the only group of people that is patted down by TSA 100% of the time. You get a pat down in a wheelchair 100% of the time when you go through TSA. And then there's things like 4,600 wheelchairs last quarter were broken by airliners.
Yeah.
And how, if you have a broken wheelchair, then most people just can't get around.
Now, can I ask you a question real quick?
Sure.
What is it like for you being a member of, shall we say, both communities kind of simultaneously?
Yeah.
How does that change your experience with things like that?
So, in this case, it's I belong to the disability group more than any other group because my leg braces caused me to get patted down. Right. I've avoided a pat down one time in Atlanta, and it's just because they forgot to pat me down. They let me just walk by with my leg braces on. But other than that, like, they'll pat you down, and I get it. It's for national security purposes and safety purposes. But at the same time, I think it's kind of a waste. Yeah. And there's two types of TSA agents in this country, in my opinion. Yeah. There's the ones that do not care and will let you get away with bringing in anything. Right. Or there's the ones that are training in front of their bosses and pat you down for 45 minutes. You get one or the other, and it's
very thorough or very lackadaisical.
Yeah, those are like the two options. And so I think air travel is a major inconvenience for people with disability in this country. And that's kind of my thing. We can talk about team travel. The wheelchair basketball team travels on a bus, and most of the time we have a lift. But if the lift breaks, it's everybody who can't walk has to crawl to the front of the bus and get on their wheelchairs. Yeah. And so I think just traveling in general, even if you're not outside the country, and how fortunate we are in this country to have the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA Act. Oh, man. That wasn't passed until 1990, which is 8 years before I was born.
Right, and that's crazy to think about for me, that I've lived my whole life with it, but there was... Oh, man, that's just crazy to think about.
Interestingly, they have a law in Israel, and this is the last thing I'll bring up, that 5% of their workforce has to be disabled.
Really?
By law.
Wow.
And that, to me, when I found that out, was very, very interesting that their culture would allow such a law to exist.
Yeah, that's actually wow. That's very surprising to me. Not that I would put that above Israel as a country, but just in terms of lawmaking and how hard it is to employ people with disabilities as much as we should do it. I agree we should, and it needs to happen. And it's important to employ people with disabilities. But at the same time, we all know it's not the same as employing someone who's able-bodied who doesn't have to disclose medical procedures, maybe doesn't have to take breaks as often, who can actually do some of the physical manual labor that we need. So to have a law like that for 5% people having to be in the labor force, that's pretty crazy.
So I Googled it to make sure you'd be accurate. And so, yes, 40% of government bodies have to have at least 5% of their workforce having a disability. However, according to this August, so a year ago, 2018 article from Haaretz.
So did I get that right?
You got that right, but 40% of the government bodies in Israel are violating that law.
Wow.
So they don't have 40% of the government bodies who are binded by that law are not following the law.
Wow.
So that's kind of a thing. But back to the whole travel thing. What is your worst travel story, Avery? Like what is like?
Oof.
Yeah.
I have, unfortunately, a lot of stories I could pick from. I guess I'll pick my last time in California, where I didn't have a power chair yet, so I was using a manual, and one of the ramifications of my disability is that my muscle strength is compromised, so I can't really push things very well. So I got this little gadget to attach a motor to my chair that some people have here at the University of Illinois, for those of you who've seen them around. So I got this little gadget and attached it to my chair, put it on the plane. They put the chair in the hold, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
And we get to California and the thing breaks.
Oh no.
It doesn't work. So then my mom, who is not the strongest individual in the world, has to manually push me off the plane. And for the entire duration of the week that we're in California.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah,
All right.
that's tough. Yeah.
Miles, do you have a story you want to share?
Yeah, actually, just this past summer, coming back from this is probably by far my worst. As Josh says, he's kind of in between where you're not able-bodied enough to be able-bodied, but not disabled enough to be disabled. I don't use a day chair when I go to airports, but I do prefer one thing about TSA is that the pat downs are usually quicker than waiting in the very long lines.
That's
and if
true.
you have a chair, you can do that. So I usually sit in my sports chair if I'm bringing it, one, so I don't have to push it, because that's just, if I have bags in my hands and I got to push a chair, might as well just sit in it.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting in my chair. I get onto the plane, and they left my chair in Chicago. So I was flying from Champaign to ORD, valet. So wait until I get off the plane. They bring me my chair back, come back to RD, or go to my gate to get to RDU in Durham, and they just left the chair in Chicago.
Now,
and so when I get to RD,
could you have hung the bags on the back of this chair?
no, my back is too short. It's like a 6-inch back. There's no way any of these bags would have hung. And then I would have been hitting the wheels. It was just not gonna happen.
Okay, continue.
But yeah, so we get back to RDU, and I'm waiting after the plane. I was like, I'm waiting on a chair, and they're like, what chair? We don't have a chair. And I was like, y'all don't have a chair. I'm like, well, I had a chair when I got into ORD. You should have a chair. And so go to American Airlines at the bottom of the place, and my dad was furious, and oh my goodness, I've actually never seen my dad this mad in my life. He's been pretty mad at me, but he was yelling. I was like, yeah, we just gotta set this down. And they offered me another chair. I was like, yeah, it'd be great if I need a chair, but it's a sports chair, and this hospital chair you're giving me is not gonna help me play wheelchair basketball. So unfortunately, they left my chair in ORD, but they did get it back to me, which thank God, because getting a new one that they would pay for.
How long did that take to get it back to you?
It took a couple days. It took about 4 days to get back, which I don't see how if they're flying from ORD to RDU every day, at least like 5 times. It's like the only flight that comes from RDU is like to ORD. So, but it took a couple days. But when I got it back, it was in the same condition that I left it with them with. But it was a struggle. I was definitely trying to get into the gym and get some shots up, and that did not happen for a couple days. So
yeah, for sure. We're kind of out of time, so I won't share my story this week. I'm sure this is a discussion we can come back to time and time again.
Oh, yeah.
But it is 7 o'clock, so if you listened at this hour, we would love for you to come back next week, 6 to 7 p.m., always on WPGU. That's Rollin Illini. We will see you next week. Be kind to one another, and we will see you next week. I'm Joshua Joins for Avery Schaefer and Miles Hill. Avery, take us out.
And for now, keep it rolling.
All right, we'll see you all
Enjoy your week.
We'll see you all next week.